What Really Happened with your host, Mike Rivero. The history the government hopes you never learn. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show today. It is Friday, August 2nd, 2019. End of the week. Thank goodness it's Friday. Thank goodness it's Friday. Thank goodness it's Friday. We have a lot to talk about today. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. It's 800-313-9443. Mike is in our control room, ready to answer the phone, put you on the air with the comments, questions, and observations. And even though this is a Friday, sadly, the Lady Claire will not be joining us in hour number 3. She is working on stuff related to our upcoming move to Indiana. And it's turning out to be a lot of work to get all of this stuff done and find homes for a lot of our old junk. So she's working on that, and I don't know when she's going to be back on the show. It may not be until after we're in Indiana, which would be sometime in September. But I'm sure you miss her. I certainly miss her. And, I mean, she's just in the next room, but she's working on other stuff related to getting this move to happen. All right, well, to get into the news here, first of all, Tropical Storm Eric is directly south of us, but far enough away where we're getting a little wind and a little rain, and that's about it. Tropical Storm Flossie is veering to the north. That'll be here Monday or Tuesday, and again, we'll get a little wind and a little rain, and that'll be about it. It's quite anticlimactic compared to all the warnings we were getting in the media. The big news today, though, of course, is that the Trump administration has unilaterally exited the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty. It seems to be the one thing Trump is really good at is pulling out of treaties. Gorbachev is saying this will lead to chaotic development. And yes, it absolutely will. Now, of course, the Trump administration is saying we're pulling out of the treaty because we're convinced Russia isn't complying. They didn't prove it, of course, but it was just an excuse here. And as soon as they announced that the INF treaty had been pulled out of, the Pentagon came on out and announced the U.S. intends to develop conventional ground-based missiles previously banned under the INF Arms Control Treaty. So, yeah, we're back to an arms race. We're back to a nuclear arms race. And that's dangerous. It is not to mention expensive. I mean, if you go back to the original Cold War and look at how much wealth was sucked out of this country to build and maintain these weapons, most of which were never used. They sit in the boneyard out there in Arizona. I remember when the F-117 stealth fighter came along, and I think it was used a few times, but mostly it went to air shows. That's now out of service. It's just this constant grinding machine of let's build the next generation weapon and spend a lot of money on it, and then it'll expire, and we can start building the next one after that. All right, once again, tragedy has struck the Kennedy family. Robert Kennedy's granddaughter, I'm not sure how to pronounce this, Soros, she's 22 years old, was found in the Kennedy compound, one of the houses in the Kennedy compound. Apparently, they suspect she died of a drug overdose, which is always a terrible thing to have happen. So that's a very, very sad thing to have happen there. All right, let's go back here to the debates and Tulsi Gabbard, because even though I'm disappointed in her voting for BDS, she is still doing a strong showing out there. And her attack on Kamala Harris was just brilliant, where she talked about Kamala Harris keeping prisoners locked up for the prison labor companies, apparently suppressed evidence that would have exonerated a man who was sitting on death row. And of course, Kamala Harris couldn't respond to any of that because it's all true. And how do you justify keeping a man on death row when you know he's innocent here? So immediately after that happened, Twitter filled up with all of Kamala Harris's supporters saying, oh, Tulsi Gabbard is being paid by Russia to bring down Kamala Harris. That's it. It's a Russian plot. Yeah, they're really saying that. They're out there really saying that Tulsi Gabbard is now a Russian stooge to bring down Kamala Harris. I think Kamala Harris is doing an excellent job of bringing herself down. All righty, we already have callers on the line. Let's start with Steve in Florida. Aloha, Steve. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, Mike. Well, with pulling out of that treaty, in good faith, I don't know why. I mean, you can't blame Russia for what they're doing right now. But, the United States has already declared that they want to weaponize space, a space weapons program, kind of like what Reagan did in Star Wars. So, I mean, on the other side of the coin there, what would you expect? That another country is looking at that as a hostile move and to world domination, world control.
Yes.
So why wouldn't they? Why wouldn't they do what they're doing? I mean, we're taking the steps in the wrong direction to bring peace in the world. And the other countries who are saying, well, I'm not going to get rid of my nuclear weapons, or I'm going to create a program, they're all right to do so because of our actions.
Absolutely. The United States is the aggressor nation. There's no question about that. And other nations have a right to self-defense. And this attitude that is coming out of the United States about how we can have all of these weapons, but you cannot, that's a tough sell.
Well, the whole international, the space station or the weaponizing of space is totally illegal. They've signed off to that long ago, that nobody would nuclearize, militarize space. But then again, we are the greatest nation to pull out of treaties, and the treaties apply to everybody else but ourselves.
I mean, there's a very good practical reason not to take warfare into space. Now, obviously, surveillance satellites are one thing, but to actually have weapons up there shooting at each other's satellites could create this disastrous situation where low Earth orbit literally becomes unusable to the human race for 100 years.
Yeah, exactly. That's it, Mike. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
All right. Thanks an awful lot. We're going to do a shout out now to our on-air affiliates who are rejoining the network. And let's go to Errol in the Netherlands. Aloha, Errol. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, long time no speak, Mike, but thank you. First of all, thank you for taking my call, and all the blessings for you and Claire when you are moving to, I think it's about the middle of America, but I want to just say one thing about Dustin from New Jersey. I read a lot of YouTube comments and so on and so on, and then I'm looking who they are. But Dustin from New Jersey, he knows what he's talking about.
Yes.
And the funny thing about this is that Dustin knows exactly what he's talking about. And again, I'm now going to confirm America, the military-industrial complex, can take a part in another part. When they are smart, they can reform. They can reform, and they can take a part in the new Silk Road. Because we can say, we can dance, we can do anything we want to. And Dustin was right. He was right on the point. The new Silk Road is emerging. There is, when you look at movies, you have worked in a movie studio.
Yes.
I'm now seeing what movies they bring out. Very nice movies from China.
Yes.
And I was like, wow. So, and when you see what they show you in the movies, you see production, you see comfort, you see intelligence, you see everything. Nowadays, when we see American movies, it's all about LGBT. I have in the 90s. I was on Love Parade in Berlin, and I know a lot of gay people. They say to me, "It's all politicized. That has nothing to do with us."
Yes.
So they now try to divide and conquer the West, to cut them down and to divide. And it's an old strategy like Sun Tzu, divide and conquer, Sun Tzu,
Yes.
So Dustin from New Jersey is straight on the point, and that's all I want to say. What I want to say to you, I bless you, and I bless Claire, and you will be okay there in what do you call it there?
Indiana.
Where do you go? Indiana. Hey,
yeah, we're going to be Hoosiers now.
Isn't that ironic?
From Hawaiian to Hoosier.
It's perfect. Hey, in het Nederlands zeggen ze, het is je gegund. So you have owned that. You have owned it. Go there. You'll be blessed. And another thing, all the fake accounts, because I look at on the internet, Ron Gibson. Thank you, Ron Gibson, and all the fake accounts always bashing. It's a Dustin and Mike Rivero show. Get the hell out. Listen, they just want to divide and conquer. That's it.
Yes.
You are the real deal. And I want to say to all the people that are listening now, give some. Listen, just what Mike said. When you have a hamburger or you have a Coca-Cola and you have that spare money, give it to the Republic Broadcasting Network or give it to whatreallyhappened.com. Support them because that are the real guys. Yeah? Thank you for taking my call, Mike, and I wish you well.
Well, thank you very much for the phone call. We're going to let you go. Getting on back to Kamala Harris. Apparently, Kamala Harris has claimed that she's refusing donations from big pharma executives, but as it turns out, from Federal Election Commission campaign finance records, apparently Harris has received thousands of dollars from executives at drug companies this year. So basically, again, she's already caught in a lie. She's already caught in a lie. By the way, did you notice in all of these debates, there have never been any questions about Israel or Palestine? Not one. The subject is verboten. We don't talk about Israel and Palestine. We talk about LGBTQ, BFD, PDQ. We talk about which bathrooms to be using, and we talk about race relations and everything, but we don't talk about Israel and Palestine, even though Israel costs us so much money. It's just completely off topic. And I think most Americans need to be made aware. That is something that really should be talked about. Not just because of the way Israel's government is behaving, but the fact that we're being forced to pay for it. And I think that's very, very important. A lot of people are up in arms over the fact that the illegal immigrants are going to get free health care. Well, look at all the free stuff we give to Israel. Do they really deserve it? And what are they doing with it? But nobody wants to talk about it in our political class here. All right, George Soros has already created a super PAC for next year's election, and she's written a $5.1 million check for Democrats, and he's not revealed which candidate will get his blessing. Now, Soros ultimately spent more than $20 million during the 2016 election, donating more than $9 million to the political action committees supporting Hillary Clinton and the rest on committees working to install Democrats in Congress and to boost minority turnout at the polls. According to records filed with the Federal Election Commission, the billionaire kicked his 2020 efforts off with a deposit of $5.1 million into his own Democracy PAC, more than doubling the $2.1 million he donated at this point in the 2016 cycle. Now, Donald Trump is out there. He's saying he wants to rein in the U.S. intelligence agencies and is hoping that John Ratcliffe is going to be very loyal to him. Now, of course, Kennedy wanted to rein in the U.S. intelligence agencies as well. Actually, he wanted to shatter the CIA and scatter the pieces to the wind after that whole Bay of Pigs fiasco. So, intelligence agencies are a problem. You need them, and yet they can be a real curse. Harry Truman, when they were first setting all of this stuff up at the end of the war, he said, you know, this could be a problem. These agencies can grow to be a curse on our government and our society. So basically, Trump is sending out a message to U.S. intelligence officials: be loyal or leave. All right, let's grab another phone call here. Mike in Brazil, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. Thanks for taking my call. I just heard Harold from Netherlands. I love the guy. He's very good, just like Dustin from New Jersey. I agree with them both 100%. I know this doesn't sound right to be, to agree with somebody 100%, but in this case, in this particular case, I do agree 100% with what Harold said about Dustin. Dustin is a very bright guy, and what can I tell you? Harold was right on the point, right? And also, I visited Amsterdam. It's a beautiful place. I don't know if he lives in Amsterdam, but as far as I can tell, Holland is a very, very nice place. Anyway, what I called about is this gun control thing. Every one of these candidates for the Democratic Party, they're all rabid gun haters,
yes,
gun prohibitionists. And that includes your favorite, Tulsi Gabbard.
Yes.
And what I advise people, okay, do not register your weapons. It doesn't matter what kind of weapon you have. It could be black powder, or it could be an AR-15, or an AK-47, whatever. Do not, because if you register your guns, they know the exact location where they can come and look for you and kill you if necessary to get your guns. And this is what Eastern Europe passed through after the Bolshevik takeover of Eastern Europe. And another thing is, Kamala Harris, talking about her, she's finished. I don't think she has any chance at all, because now it's been discovered that not only that she took money from Big Pharma, but somebody in her family was actually a slave trader.
Yes.
And that wouldn't sit well with somebody, especially from the Democratic Party, and especially somebody of brown color. Okay? So, what I'm saying is that all of them that you've seen on television during the Democratic debate, they're all liars. They all lie.
Yes.
And like you said before, a few minutes ago, nobody dares to mention Palestine and Israel. None of them. I mean, I was waiting to hear somebody speaking in defense of Palestine and the Palestinians. None of them did. And it's disgusting. I mean, these people, Palestine, in my opinion, is probably one of the world's largest concentration camps mankind has ever seen.
Yes.
Forget about the Nazis and the gulags, the Soviet gulags. I mean, Palestine is really the world's largest concentration camp there has ever been. And, like I always say, I hope you're right. Every morning when I wake up, I pray that you're right. Like that, there's going to be a peaceful dissolution of the situation in the United States, and everybody's going to build a new country. They're going to help building a new country, like you say. But I got a problem with that, because as long as you have a Federal Reserve that can keep printing money over time and lending it out to the government,
All right,
there's
Mike,
not going to be any economic
Mike,
collapse.
I got to put you on hold.
Yes.
I got to put you on hold. We got to take a break
Okay.
for commercials. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. We're talking with Mike in Brazil. We're talking about the gun grabbers. We're talking about we're talking about all kinds of different things. Mike, just sort of pick up where you left off.
Yeah, I was going to say this, that anybody who has guns, and they're not cheap nowadays. Okay, I remember back in 1995, I bought an AR-10T, which is the sniper version of the AR-10, and with heavy barrel, and I spent $1,700. This was back in 1995.
Yeah.
Now, I imagine that kind of rifle today probably goes for around $5,000. Okay, so I know how much money I invested in these weapons that I had. Okay, so I try to advise people: do not register your guns, because once you register them, they know where to get you, and they will kill you if they have to. They will kill you. They're not going to have any compunction about it. Okay, they will kill you. And what I was going to say is this, Mike. Revolution is just one election away. Okay?
Yeah.
Depends who's going to win the White House in 2020. But I hope you're right. This is what I'm saying. I hope a peaceful collapse is going to happen and nobody's going to die. There's not going to be any bloodshed and all that. But I believe this is inevitable. Who said this? Thomas Jefferson, that from time to time the tree of liberty must be...
watered with the blood of patriots and tyrants. Yes, that was Jefferson.
Yeah, that's right. I don't know who said that, but it's a very good thing, that he said, whoever said it. But anyway, this is what I was going to say, that people hang on to their guns because I know how much money they paid for them. I myself, I was a gun owner when I was living in the States, and do not let them find out where you are, because if you register them, they know where to get you. So, anyway, what I was going to say is that I hope 2020 will see Donald Trump reelected, although, like you, I'm very disappointed in him because he never kept any of his promises he made. Actually, he's doing things he never promised he will do. And as long as the Federal Reserve keeps printing money out of thin air,
yes,
I don't see this economic collapse coming anytime soon, Mike.
Well, I mean, they can keep printing money out of thin air to the point where the money is not perceived as having any worth or value anymore. And we've seen that kind of hyperinflation destroy countries before, like the Weimar Republic. So certainly, when there is a collapse, and all empires fall, we just need to say, when we start back up again, no more private central banking. We need an honest money system, which is going to be good for the people and the country.
Yeah, well, our current money system, Mike, it's a criminal operation, literally. I mean, they have a monopoly on the money supply, and they can print as much money as they want. They can finance. I mean, imagine if the Pentagon has their budget is bigger than that of the U.S. government combined.
Yes.
I mean, we're talking about trillions of dollars here. Imagine, I mean, I just saw a video on YouTube about a guy in California. I think it's called M Studios or something like that. And he filmed all these 10 cities in Sacramento, Modesto, and other places like that. And I felt like, I said, oh my God, I mean, California is my place. That's where I grew up, in California, in Los Angeles. I used to live 4 blocks away from Pacific Palisades in Santa Monica. Uh-huh. And I looked at the pictures and I felt horrified. And I said, man, this is for real. This is not just somebody's imagination. And I don't even know what to say. I'm at a loss for words to describe what's happening there. Meanwhile, the illegal immigrants, these illegals are crossing the border at will. They get all the assistance, but American citizens born and raised there, they don't get anything. And
Nope.
This bothers me a lot. Well, I'm sure you agree with me on this one.
It should. The government is taking money away from the American people and spending it everywhere else except on the American people and on the infrastructure of our nation.
Yeah, well, like myself, I worked for 45 years, Mike, and all I ended up with is with a pension of less than $1,000 a month. Okay, that's why I moved to Brazil. I couldn't make it in the United States anymore. And I would be facing the same situation like these poor people in California. I probably would have to live in a tent somewhere because the money that I get in the Social Security benefits that I'm getting is not enough. Even here in Brazil, I'm like, cutting edge, between survival and being on the streets. So I don't know what people think about Brazil, but, well, of course, the life is cheaper here than in the States. for $5 you can eat a lot better than you can eat in the States. But anyway, well, Mike, this is what I was going to say. So thank you for taking my call, and have a very good show. And kudos to Harold in Netherlands and
it's
Dustin,
Errol.
New Jersey.
It's
They're right on the point.
It's
Whatever,
pronounced Errol. Errol
Okay.
in the Netherlands.
Okay.
No H. All right, well, listen, we got to take another
he's a
break
great
for
guy.
commercials here. Thank you very much for the phone call, and we'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. We're going to go back to the phones to Jim in Illinois. Aloha, Jim. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hello, Michael. A couple of things. You mentioned about Congressman John Radcliffe. He is no longer the nominee to be head of the NSI. He dropped out.
Okay. I wonder why.
Probably because he wasn't qualified.
Well,
I mean,
I've got this one story here where basically Radcliffe was saying he was going to get to the bottom of Russiagate. All right, so who's the current nominee?
Well, Trump stated he's going to have to find someone. That came across about an hour or 2 hours ago.
Ah, okay. No, I had missed that.
Yeah. Well, again, as far as the guy's background, before he was a congressman, he was a mayor of a small town in Texas.
Well, I could understand from Trump's point of view why maybe he didn't want a professional intelligence officer as DNI, because they're going to be sympathetic to the intelligence agencies and sort of more resistant to Trump's directives. So I can see where Trump was going with this. So we'll see who he nominates.
Right. And the other thing, someone tried to break into Congressman Elijah Cummings' home.
Yes.
And Trump sarcastically tweeted about that. I mean, suppose somebody would have got killed or hurt.
I saw the tweet. I saw Trump's tweet on that, and it didn't come across as particularly sarcastic. It just said somebody tried to burglarize the guy's home.
Well, why even bring it up since it happened over 2 weeks ago?
Maybe Trump just heard about it now. I really could not say.
Yeah. And the final thing, did you see where 3 Republicans in Texas, congressmen, are no longer running?
Yeah, there's been a lot of people dropping out.
Well, is that because they feel like they might lose, or the fact is they realize nothing can be done on Capitol Hill?
I think it's probably the former one, because it costs a lot of money to run a campaign, and they may have failed to raise enough money to mount a successful campaign, and they decided to drop out. We're going to see a lot of dropouts between now and the end of the year, particularly among these Democratic presidential candidates. They all can't stay in the race, through the primary season.
The thing that surprises me, who's giving these guys money to run?
Well, constituents within the districts they're going to represent, billionaires like George Soros, and pharmaceutical executives.
Wow. Well, Michael, that's it. You have a nice weekend. Take care.
All right, thanks an awful lot here, and we're going to switch over to Tony in Puerto Rico. Aloha, Tony. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Mike, I have a quick comment. Why doesn't Donald Trump start a national works program, get people working, help the economy, pay down the national debt, similar to what Hitler did with Germany, with the Autobahn?
Well, Roosevelt did the same thing here with his New Deal, where he started this massive civil engineering construction across the country, and was building all these dams, hydroelectric projects, and so forth.
Yeah, but isn't there something Trump can do? I mean, for the American economy, for his re-election, it's something he has to do. Get re-elected.
Well, right now, unfortunately, most politicians are campaigning on just giving money to the voters. And against that, somebody's saying, if you vote for me, I'll give you a chance to work for money they're going to say, no, we're going to go over and vote Democratic because they're going to take money away from the white people and give it to the black people.
All right, thank you, Mike.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go. And yeah, Mike in the control room was saying the Ratcliffe thing, just now happened. So that's disappointing because, again, I've got this story here that was coming out of Information Clearinghouse about how Ratcliffe was intent on getting to the bottom of Russiagate. And that would have been a good thing. But now I guess apparently he is out and they're going to have to find somebody else. Okay. President Trump tore into his Democratic rivals for the presidency at a campaign rally in Cincinnati last night, but dialed back his criticisms of the squad of freshman Democratic lawmakers in the first rally since his supporters drew bipartisan condemnation for engaging in an impromptu "send her back" chant directed at the Somali-born representative. So he's pulling back on that. When, of course, it wasn't something that Trump himself done. It's not like Trump got up there and said, "Send her back, send her back." Now, the other day we were talking about how filmmaker Michael Moore was out there saying that the Democratic field is very weak. He's correct on that. But it could be strengthened by bringing Michelle Obama into the campaign. Well, okay, easy to dismiss. But now all of a sudden, Rush Limbaugh is saying voters need to keep an eye out for the Obamas because he is saying that, yeah, Michelle could actually join the race for president. And talk about somebody not having the qualifications. I'm sorry she doesn't. Of course, she could just be a front woman, if you would, for Barack to come back and basically have his third term. Now, Time magazine is reporting that the Quinnipiac poll, which came out Wednesday, found 33% of Americans see Barack Obama as the worst president since World War II. We haven't really had any good presidents for a long, long time, sadly. Okay. Now, a U.S. judge has ruled that WikiLeaks was fully entitled to publish the Democratic National Committee emails, which means no law was broken. Now, this is significant as it could impact upon the U.S. extradition proceedings against Julian Assange, as well as the ongoing imprisonment of Chelsea Manning. The judge is saying no law was broken. What are they going to prosecute him for? Article coming on out of the Ron Paul Liberty Report, speaking the truth does not make you a pessimist or a doomsayer. And the article basically goes on about how almost from preschool, we're being conditioned by the government to believe certain things, to assume certain things, and to basically go along with the crowd and say, yes, if everybody else believes this, then so do I. And but following the crowd is the religion, and following your own conscience is now considered heresy. So yes, I'm a heretic. What can I tell you here? Now this one is really weird. There's a new document out from the FBI that has declared that conspiracy theories are a domestic terror threat. And their thinking is that conspiracy theories are going to convince people not to trust the government, that they're going to anger people and possibly motivate them to acts of violence. Well, I don't think anybody's been motivated to an act of violence over the Vincent Foster case, but that's their thinking now. They're really trying to clamp down on anything that is not the official story. So the FBI is now saying conspiracy theories are a domestic terror threat. And that's a little weird to think about because I don't think of myself as a terrorist. Irritating? Yes. Obnoxious? Yes. Terror? No. Okay. Over in Syria, the Syrian Arab Army and its allies continued their advance in northern Hama, and they were doing very well against that. But apparently late yesterday, yet another ceasefire was declared with the Damascus government, and it enters into force as of today. So the ceasefire will be implemented as long as the militants in Idlib remain committed to the demilitarized zone agreement. Now, that agreement was reached in September of last year, says that radical militants and heavy weapons should be withdrawn from the demilitarized zone around Idlib. However, it was not implemented because the militant groups just ignored it. Local groups are saying it's unlikely they will fulfill the agreement despite having a new peaceful initiative. So things are still going on over there. And the danger, of course, is that they'll use the ceasefire to regroup and rearm. Syria is saying that Israel struck Quneitra near the border with the Golan Heights, attacking a Syrian army position. This happened yesterday. And according to Syria's official news agency Sana, a missile struck the position, causing material damage but no casualties. And Hebrew language media reported that residents of the Israeli Golan Heights heard loud explosions. All right, over in Afghanistan, they're still talking peace. They're talking ceasefire. The U.S. is basically posturing to leave Afghanistan without having to admit that they basically lost that war. But the initial peace deal would call for a drawdown of 5,000 U.S. troops. So they still haven't finalized the deal as of last night, but they're still working on it. And the U.S. is presenting the peace process as 4 stages, with deals on withdrawing foreign troops, the Taliban pledging to keep ISIS and al-Qaeda out of Afghanistan, the ceasefire, and then a power-sharing deal between the Taliban and the Ghani government. So we'll see what happens over there. Donald Trump has threatened Europe that if the 28-member bloc fails to repatriate European Daesh members captured in Syria and Iraq, he may just release the terrorists. Just let them go. Basically send them back where they came from. What a mess this all is here. There's been a survey, and according to the German daily newspaper Der Tagesspiegel, the majority of Germans, both East and West, want improved relations with Russia. They want relations with Russia to normalize. And apparently 72% of Germans living in the east of the country, 54% of those living in the west of the country want a new rapprochement with Moscow. So with all of this aggressive bullying by the United States of America, it's pushing countries away from us and pushing them into the Russian sphere of influence. It's a failed foreign policy. It really is. All righty. Over in Yemen, attacks by the Houthi movement against pro-Saudi and pro-UAE targets have killed at least 51 people, most of them military forces loyal to the UAE and a high-ranking UAE official. And the latest incident was a missile fired by the Houthis, which hit a military parade in the southern capital of Aden. We talked about this briefly yesterday. The casualties included a number of military commanders and parading fighters. And despite drone and missile attacks being launched by the Houthis, and the Houthis being very clear about that fact, Saudi Arabia continues to blame Iran. Over in Turkey, their interior minister has threatened to open the floodgates to mass migration into Europe, warning that no European government will be able to survive for more than 6 months. Now, back in March of 2016, the EU agreed to allow Turkish citizens visa-free travel to the EU and begin a pathway for Turkey to join the EU in return for Ankara stemming the flow of migrants into Europe. However, the EU has failed to deliver on the promise, prompting Turkey to assert it will back out of the deal. So the EU may be looking at another migrant crisis. We've been talking about Turkey and the F-35 deal. Apparently, Israel lobbied the United States to drop the F-35 deal with Turkey in an effort to maintain its military edge in the region. Israel doesn't want anybody else to have the F-35. Israel's estimation of the F-35 is optimistic, shall we begin. So Tel Aviv began urging the White House to drop Ankara from the F-35 program shortly after Erdogan approved the purchase of the S-400 missile defense system from Russia. And according to Israeli Channel 12, Israel put pressure on Washington to cancel the sale of the advanced aircraft to Turkey. I think they ought to take a much closer look at that jet before they start, playing politics with it. So Turkey was suspended from the F-35 program last month, with the U.S. administration claiming the Russian S-400 would compromise the security of its F-35 jets. Turkey denies the claim, adding that for years it tried unsuccessfully to buy U.S. Patriot missile defense systems before it turned to the S-400s. So a lot of arms trading going on there, and an interesting admission that the S-400 compromises the security of the F-35. I've heard the S-400 described as one of the best all-around air defense systems out there. And we know from the first Iraq War, the Patriots aren't all that good. They missed a lot of the incoming targets. Apparently, hundreds of Jewish settlers have stormed the historic and archaeological sites at the village of Awarta, southeast of occupied Nablus. And apparently, Israeli buses evacuated hundreds of Jewish settlers to the western area of Awarta village, accompanied by dozens of military vehicles. We have to take another break for commercials. We have another caller on the line, and we'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here, and we're going to go to the phones to Keith Rogers. Aloha, Keith. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, I had a couple stories for you. I just sent you that article over about that captured Israeli ISIS member, the jihadist, how he begs Netanyahu for repatriation. I like the quote on there. It says, "You do not discriminate between Arab Jews and Druze. I'm having a very tough time in prison." And the other thing I want to say is, I don't know if anyone really follows the quakes down in California and stuff. However, that one article out of NEO, the Northeastern Outlook there, where it says Yellowstone supervolcano and Americans relocating to Russia, is a very interesting story. And if anyone goes to the one-day all magnitudes of USGS there and looks at the quakes like I do here in Montana, and realizing the push that's coming not only from the Northern California and Southern California, but also from the Juan de Fuca plate there going up underneath the continent there, that something is moving, as well as these mountains that are showing massive cracks and stuff like that. But I was thinking as I read that, it's not nice to diss someone that might be your soon-to-be neighbor. And the other thing, the NSC 68, which is available on Wiki there if you read it, you'd made a statement earlier about kind of bad U.S. policy to push everyone into the hands of Russia. Well, that's the stated goal of that NSC 68, is to demonize their so-called evil Satan, which gives them the allocation to spend more money on the war, the eternal war machine.
Yes.
So You know, when you hear that Turkey's buying the S-3 or S-400s like that, and Duterte down there in the Philippines, he didn't want to buy U.S. weapons because they come with strings. Everyone is starting to buy from Russia, and it's because of the practice that the United States has. But this is a stated goal, just like down in Venezuela, whether it's U.S. troops there or down in Cuba. This has all been the premise there is to keep demonizing Russia in every way, just like they will not drop this Russian hoax story, because that's the final outcome. And when you look at in the West here, the unemployment numbers of the youth, they don't look good in nice little uniforms out there fighting on the Russian front. It didn't help the Germans out that froze to death, as well as the cold weather training all of the Western countries are doing.
Yes.
So, anyway, I just want to pass it on.
This push into the Arctic and now the Antarctic. Heaven alone knows why.
Yeah. I think we might get a different form of global warming, if you know what I mean.
Yes, unfortunately. It's going to happen very, very
All right, my best, you
quickly.
and Claire.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go.
Yeah.
All right. All right, so we already talked about Nablus. Okay. A federal judge in New York Tuesday dismissed a lawsuit from the Democratic National Committee alleging that the Trump campaign... Oh, actually, we got to take a break for station identification. We'll come back to this story after these few words. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, hour number 2. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. So we're talking about the story where a federal judge in New York has dismissed a lawsuit from the Democratic National Committee alleging that the Trump campaign, WikiLeaks, and the Russian government had conspired to interfere in the 2016 election. And basically, the judge wrote in his ruling, the Trump officials were shielded from the allegations under the First Amendment. And he said that Russia could not be sued in the courts for election interference for jurisdictional reasons, but they could face sanctions instead. And once again, we're finding out there was no crime committed. Russiagate never really happened. We know that in point of fact, Seth Rich was leaking that information out to WikiLeaks. So why are the sanctions still there? I asked that earlier in the week. Isn't it time to lift the sanctions? Well, heck no. Maybe the sanctions over the hacking the DNC are unrealistic and unfair, but we're going to keep them in place because of the Skripal case. We're going to keep the sanctions. We're going to add even more sanctions on Russia over that Skripal case. Needless to say, there's been absolutely zero proof Russia had anything to do with it. In fact, that whole story has just been wanky from beginning to end. The world's deadliest neurotoxin poison, and both the intended victims survived, along with all the first responders who showed up without the appropriate protective gear. So this idea is being pushed by Congressman Elliot Engel and Michael McCall, saying that, yes, we have to sanction Russia over the Skripal case. That's a really bad way to run a foreign policy, to make up completely fictitious claims about another country and then act as if they were real, whether it's Saddam's nuclear weapons or Assad's sarin gas, and now the Skripal case here. Alrighty, North Korea has launched even more missiles, and these are obviously test firings. They're not getting anywhere near Japan or Guam. They just go on out and fall down in the Sea of Japan. But I think North Korea is basically signaling that they have really reached the end of their patience, and either the United States come to the table with a substantive offer, or the whole deal's off and North Korea is going to go back to building nuclear weapons and long-range ballistic missiles. All right, let's take a phone call here. Mark in North Carolina. Aloha, Mark. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Mike. Mike, a couple of things. One is earlier today, I see that the media is really attacking, the corporate media is really attacking Tulsi Gabbard for, the Assad business, that she went to see Assad, which I think is a plus for her, not a minus. But I think Tulsi's making one mistake there. She handles herself well, but she should take the offensive and tell people who Assad really is. That don't go along and say, well, he's a dictator. No, he's not a dictator. As a matter of fact, I consider Syria right now the only true, real democracy, not Israel, but Syria, the only real true democracy, secular democracy in the Middle East today. And Assad, one of the greatest leaders in the world today. And I call him the Abe Lincoln of Syria. And not just because if you look at Lincoln without the beard, they actually look kind of alike, you know? But
Yeah.
but mostly because Syria, you know, is in a civil war. Okay, we were in a civil war in the United, obviously in a civil war, right? And
well, there's a difference. The Syrian civil war isn't really a civil war; it's a covert U.S. intervention. In the case of the United States, you know, civil war, while there were some outside players like Russia and Europe, this was definitely an internal strife.
But how I would compare it, though, is that during our Civil War, superpowers at the time, British and the French, threatened to and came close to interfering because cotton at the time was the oil of what oil is today, cotton was back then. And they wanted that cotton, and they were imperialists, obviously. And as a matter of fact, the French took advantage by invading Mexico at the time, knowing that the U.S. couldn't do anything to stop them. That's how you get Cinco de Mayo.
Yes.
By the way. But anyway, what happened is the Russians told the British and the French to lay off. On top of that, the fact Lincoln issuing the Emancipation Proclamation made it clear that at least to the British that you want to be on the side of slavery, kind of like with today with the terrorists that are attacking Syria, and actually, like you said, funded by the United States. People have to make it understood that we are actually helping Al-Qaeda. Not only did we probably invent Al-Qaeda in the first place, but we're actually helping them now. We threaten Syria if they go after Al-Qaeda in Idlib. We're bombing in forces. We're allowing the Israelis to bomb Syrian forces. And Russia is like during the Civil War, our Civil War, they're taking Syria's side. I would go further, though. If I was President Putin, I would tell the Israelis once and for all, one more attack on Syria, we're going to start taking out the Israeli airfields, period. With your planes, you can have all the F-35s that you want. They're going to disappear. That's what I would do if I was Putin. But I know Putin's got a lot of patience. I don't know if he's really half Jewish. I've heard he might be half Jewish, and that might be one of his reasons for hesitation. I don't know. I told you I'm of Jewish extraction. If I was president in this country, I would have no loyalty to Israel. Matter of fact, I would tell him as an American president that you attack any other country, expect some of the airfields to disappear. And I'd get our troops out of there, out of the Middle East in the first place, and just put them on warning. Okay, but I don't know if Putin is really half Jewish or not, and whether that might be why he's hesitating. I'll put it to you. What do you think, Mike?
Well, again, you know, the word Jewish gets thrown around a lot, and it's very blurry because Judaism is a religion, but it very often Jewish it refers to a person's race. And just because somebody is of Jewish ancestry doesn't mean they follow the Jewish religion or the Jewish morality or ethics. So I would tend to say that probably even if Putin is part Jewish, it doesn't seem to dominate his personality. He certainly, when he's negotiating with other world leaders, he doesn't come across like a Netanyahu.
No, absolutely not. But I'm just saying that might give him just a little hesitation to come down hard on Netanyahu and his thugs. See, the thing is this. When you
I think that has more to do with the fact that the United States is standing behind Israel. And Putin doesn't want to escalate tensions with the United States any more than they already are.
Well, that might have something to do with it. You might be right on that also. The thing is, what you say, you know, with the Jewish, with the religion, ethnic group. See, I wouldn't go to 23andMe or any of these things because I believe they're looking to get all the information they can. That's Google, and they're trying to get information on us. to maybe come up with some kind of a ethnic bomb or something, a racial bomb. So I wouldn't cooperate with them at all. I wouldn't get. But if I had to guess, if I had to really look at my ethnic background, it probably consists of the genes. It would probably consist of Slavic, German, Semitic, and maybe even some Central Asian. What do you call it? Khazarian. Khazars, whatever. Anyway, that would probably would it be. You know, be a little bit of everything. But because that's what because that's Ashkenazi Jews basically are, a mixture of those people. Somehow the Jewish religion got was brought in there probably somewhere maybe when it probably a lot of them probably went there from Spain or from Germany originally. I don't know. It's hard to say. But my thing is this. As far as religion goes, I don't belong to any kind of organized religion. So, but I understand that on my birth certificate it says Jewish. So if it hit the fan like it did in Germany, they would have something to come after me about. So that's why, But it really, I have no loyalty to that to Judaism. I have loyalty to this country, and that's it. But
yep.
Again, as far as President Putin goes, being that Russia was involved, his father was very heavily involved in I think I'm not sure if he wasn't killed, but he was heavily involved in a battle for St. Pete. Well, at that time it was Leningrad and all that, and he was very steep. It was the Red Army that liberated those concentration camps and all that, and that also probably affects Putin's thinking also. Putin is a feeling person. He's not what they make him. He's anything but what they try to make him out to be. He's actually, as far as his religion goes, he actually is a Christian. He feels for people. He loves the Russian people, and he loves other people too. He's one of the, but that I'm just trying to explain to you what I think might be. He might be going a little easier in Israel than he probably should. Because
I think he's going easy on Israel for the same reason that all other countries on earth go easy on Israel, because the United States is standing behind Israel with that big nuclear club in their hands.
Well, he's got his own nuclear club. I mean, we don't want that, but right? I mean, it would be nobody would win a war like that. I don't know.
Well, I think it's the United States' unqualified support for Israel is what's making other countries back off. I mean, every once in a while in the Security Council, they'll try and rein Israel in, and always the United States goes in there with the veto.
Well, yeah, that's true. But it can't keep on going like this, Mike. I mean, it's one of the things I was just acquainted with Tulsi, too, when she did that anti-BDS sign on to that thing. It didn't have any teeth to it, but she shouldn't have done that. She really shouldn't. She has to make it clear. She keeps talking about Saudi Arabia. Well, Israel and Saudi Arabia are basically the same thing. And that's another thing, too, by the way, Mike. I know you may probably disagree, but I think there is some kind of a connection between Judaism and not all Judaism, but the most radical form of Judaism and the most radical form of Islam, which is Wahhabism. I don't know where it goes to. It may be in the Talmud. It might be in the somewhere in the Quran or.
There's a connection between all of them. There's a connection. I mean, Islam, Judaism, and Christianity all track back to Abraham and his monotheistic religion, and they'll go along for a while and they'll split off. And so, yeah, a great deal of what's in Islam came out of Judaism.
Well, it's not just that. I'm not, like I said, I'm not only talking about, there seems to be some kind of a really close relationship. Now, you might say, well, Israel just wants to have them on their side for the time being, and then they'll deal with them later. But Israel actually wants the Saudis to get nuclear weapons. Israel, they told Kushner that to tell them they want, to give them nuclear technology and all that, which of course would lead to nuclear weapons. Now,
yes,
if the Israelis are that, either that they're crazy, and or there is some real connection between these two groups. Maybe I've read there's things on the internet that I look at sometimes that said, for instance, the Saudis are really crypto Jews. There also could be some connection with the what do you call it, Khazaria again? Because maybe the at least part
okay,
of the
you're
Saudis.
trying to put this all in the context of, these ancient genetic ethnic connections. This is just modern politics. Right now, the government of Israel and the government of Saudi Arabia are very much aligned. They are trying to basically knock down regional rivals like Iran. So, politics does make for strange bedfellows.
It does, but it just seems to be too cozy. I don't know. I think there's more to it. Like, I don't know. I don't speak Hebrew or understand it or read it. I don't speak Arabic, understand it or read it. So you could read some of these things like the Quran, or you could read it, or the what do you call it, Talmud, and some of these other books. But you're not really getting a real translation. You're getting an English version of these of these religions, and we really don't know what the actual. You'd have to read it in the original languages to understand it. But I believe there's a connection. I know, Mike. I can't prove it. I'm looking into things a little bit, but I don't know. But I suspect there is some kind, especially between the the Wahhabis and the Habab Lubavitches, or whatever they call it. Yeah, and the Talmud and the Quran. I just believe there is some kind of connection, Mike.
Okay, then how do you explain the fact that in times past, Israel and Saudi Arabia have been at each other's throats? That would suggest it's a political operation, not a religious one. Anyway, Mark, I'm going to let you go. We're getting a little tight on time here. I want to open up the phone lines. And I want to do a shout out now to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. So getting on back to the news here. Apparently, the Air Force has announced a one-day tactical pause taking place over the next 45 days to address a rise in suicides across the force. And apparently it is a real problem, whatever they're putting those kids through. But General David Goldfein was basically sent out the letter to the commanders saying something has to be done. Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force Caleth O. Wright announced in a video that the effort will serve as a new beginning for promoting resiliency in airmen, and saying the Air Force is losing more airmen to suicide than to the enemy. Now, over at the Navy, they're dealing with a scandal there with alleged misbehavior by the SEALs. And apparently top command is coming down on them and saying, you got to get this under control. Apparently there was allegations of widespread drug abuse, assault of civilians. Just isn't quite the image that Hollywood gave us here. And let's get back on to the USS Gerald R. Ford, the most expensive ship in the U.S. Navy. Still can't get ammo up to the deck on most of those elevators, and apparently it can't launch the F-35. And apparently the carriers, there was a report published in 2017, revealed the carrier's catapults, arresting gear, and radar systems are all of poor or unknown reliability. Now, the arresting gear, that's that wire at the beginning of the angle deck. It's responsible for catching and rapidly slowing a landing jet. It's supposed to withstand 16,500 landings before failure. Apparently, the one on the Ford can handle 19. So this gives the gear a 0.2% chance of surviving a day of sustained combat. That's unacceptable. They can't deploy that ship. It's not ready for combat. So the new ship is not compatible with the F-35 stealth fighter, which has got its own problems. In fact, with the exception of the USS Abraham Lincoln, not a single carrier in the U.S. 11-strong fleet can deploy with the F-35. Unless they take the vertical takeoff ones, which have their own problems here. All righty. One of our senators is out there raising the hue and cry, saying that Russia and China's hypersonics are nightmare weapons and U.S. carriers are vulnerable. And yes, that is absolutely true. Russia and China are years ahead of the United States on these hypersonic weapons. And the U.S. carriers, they're basically a relic left over from World War II. And they are vulnerable to the latest generation, not just of hypersonic weapons, but of sea-skimming, maneuverable, ship-killing missiles. We got to take a break for commercials, and we'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. We're going to go right to the phones to Jesse in Utah. Aloha, Jesse. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. Hope everything's going well.
Yes.
You hear me? You hear
Yes.
me all right?
Yeah, you're on the air.
I was just going to say, he was talking about Tulsi Gabbard. She does an awesome interview with Joe Rogan, and she really elaborates on all that stuff. They go over, they're trying to say she's a dictator lover and all that stuff. But if you go to YouTube or whatever to listen to it, really good interview with her. It's over an hour, and just a down-to-earth, great interview. So if you want any questions answered about her, that's a good way to do it right there.
Well, okay, thank you. I mean, she does look good. She presented well at the debates here. I was supporting her despite her stance on the Second Amendment. But with that BDS vote, I find my ardor for her cooling somewhat. But there isn't anybody else there I can look at. A lot of people have said, it's a bunch of wannabes on that stage. We don't see any statesmen. We don't see anybody who's standing on principle. And once again, going into 2020, the American people are going to be voting for the lesser of several evils.
Yeah, I mean, the thing she says, she's, I don't know if she's being honest or not, but sounds a lot like Trump,
Yes.
Or the wars and stuff like that. So, I mean, if you're going off of what somebody says, she definitely says some good things. But I just thought it was a good, because she really has that's one thing about that platform is people have a chance to explain themselves. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And she really goes into meeting with the president of, it was Syria, right? And
yes.
Anyway,
she's drawn a lot of flack for that one. But
and she really explains herself well, and I thought it was cool that she actually had a platform to explain herself about it, And what she had to say was, I mean, I couldn't argue with it. It was awesome, But yeah, and there's always something we don't like. But as far as wars go, I definitely agree with her. So.
Okay. All right. Well, listen, thank you very much for the phone call. We're going to switch over to Al in Canada. Aloha, Al. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. Tulsi Gabbard. Didn't Tulsi Gabbard and Dennis Kucinich go over to Syria, or was it Cynthia McKinney? Or
to the best of my knowledge, the one that everybody is making the big deal about was Tulsi herself.
There was that lady. She was a Canadian journalist. She went over to see what was going on, and she came back and she was talking to the UN about what was happening over there, what was actually happening, because the news media wasn't even over there at all whatsoever. Yeah. Not at all. They were just making stuff up as they went along, as usual. But anyway, I actually called to talk to you about the military. And Mike, you're a smart guy. You're older. You got a lot of experience. And if you meet an engineer, it doesn't matter what engineer they are, and they don't have gray hair, they're stupid. They're absolute idiots. They are book trained. Period. They have no experience in the real world, and the experience they do have is based upon books, which is usually a failure. I've seen it I've witnessed this sort of thing with my own eyes. It's brutal, and they're all fighting amongst themselves in a big pissing contest to try and prove who's right when the proof is actually in the pudding. If something doesn't work, then you're wrong.
Yes.
I've worked on stuff for months on end in plants, and it never ever worked. And some of the stuff was scrapped. And this is just and they're defiant. It's like, I've got this little pinky ring and I'm better than you. Not to mention, the money, right? Those US dollars.
Yes. Well, that really is a failure of the educational system, because certainly in my father's generation, and he graduated with an engineering degree from MIT, they did try and get the engineers out there in the real world, and we did produce fine products and fine factories. But lately, as college has become a racket to make money to get people hooked on debt slavery, the actual value of the education has been in decline.
Yeah. Well, exactly what you just said. It's all about the banking. Not to mention, everything the government gets involved in turns to SHIT.
Yep. Got you on that one.
All the time.
Yeah, they really do. Well, because the people in the government, they aren't engineers or doctors or anything. Anyway, Al, got to let you go. Got to take another break for commercials, and we'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. We're going to go back to the phones to Peter in Los Angeles. Aloha, Peter. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Mike, I called to talk a little bit about the military, but I just wanted to start out with some things that I'm in pretty strong agreement with Mark about Putin and Israel, and also Saudi Arabia and Israel. And the first thing is that Putin has a large Jewish population that he has to contend with.
Yes.
I'm sure they're every bit as organized as they are here. He also has a lot of their oligarchs that are still around are mostly Jewish. Got a lot of stuff to deal with over there on his own. Plus, there's quite a few, by the way, Russians. I mean, a very large proportion of Israel's society are the Russian immigrants.
Yes.
That came out. But I wanted to also say that I think he's onto something about the if not a link, but at least a similarity between the Wahhabi schools and the Chabad things. Basically, both of them teach sort of an alien in the midst supremacist sort of ideology wherever they're at.
Yes.
And in that, and then of course Saudi Arabia is a thuggish theocracy, and so is Israel. So they're united against Iran. There's a lot of them. There's a lot of commonalities for them to be commiserating amongst themselves with. But I was really calling about the military and about what you were saying about the Ford and the suicide rate in the Air Force and so on and so forth. And I wanted to point out just how horribly the United States military, and not just the military, but since they consume the lion's share of our resources, but convert dollars into capability. It's really, really inefficient when you consider that, that what we had in World War II was 16 million people at one point or another in uniform, and we had an 8.5 million man army, by the way. And then just the other day, I think I sent you the article. There's a shortage of infantrymen in the army, and how bad that was. They said they were topped out. If they were at full strength, there would be 24,000 11 Bravo. It's foot soldier riflemen guys in the whole entire United States Army. In World War II, out of the 8.5 million people, that number was around 1.5 million or 2 million all over the world.
Yes.
So about 1 out of 4 was an infantryman there. they sustained almost 90% of the casualties, by the way.
Yes.
But the other thing is how inefficiently they spend money. And I had this conversation with a friend of mine the other day. And when I was in Desert Storm, in the open desert, and there's no cover, no nothing, in Kuwait and in southern Iraq. This is back when they had the M16 rifle,
yes.
not the what they have now, the M4. The rifle, which longer length, heavy barrel, all that kind of stuff, greater range, and even then, with a range of 440 yards, effective range, and frankly that was being generous. You literally could not fire. An infantryman could not fire suppression against whoever who was wielding anti-tank guided missile, a SAGR. Excuse me, not a SAGR. Oh my God, RPG, an RPG.
Yes.
They could barrage fire RPGs from over 500 yards, and you couldn't suppress them. You couldn't fire cover for our tanks. So, I mean, that's a glaring thing. And when you only have 24,000 at full strength, and we're not, we have 19,000 riflemen. If you want range, for instance, moving to something like a 7.62 or greater would double the effective controlling ground that a U.S. infantryman with their paucity of numbers can cover. But the other thing I wanted to say is, to put this in context, is 24,000 infantrymen. The New York PD has 35,000.
Yes.
And they can't control Central Park. They can't even control Central Park.
Well, they're not allowed to use M4s.
Yeah, that's right. But it's with all the money we spend, and that's the only real power. We're talking about the Ford, we're talking about the Air Force, the F-35, the ground forces, all that stuff. The horrible capability we have, these poor 24,000 guys put out in the middle of nowhere with ineffective weapons. I mean, it's really, really bad. And put that into context. Yep. Central Park, 35,000. So,
Well, I mean, it's no secret that the military-industrial complex is hideously wasteful, that it's really all about the money, and we're paying for it now. And, Harry Truman had to deal with the same thing in the years before World War II, trying to get the defense contractors to actually deliver what they promised to deliver for the money that they were being paid. So, we're not getting much bang for our buck compared to other nations.
Well, and the thing is that the Russians and the Chinese will actually put people to death for graft. There's plenty of it there, but at least they make a real effort to stem it. But if somebody comes up with something like an F-35 in China, people's heads would roll. And their procurement systems in Russia and in China are there, and mostly they deliver on getting, effective weapons into the hands of their troops as soon as possible at the lowest price.
Yes.
Well, as you've said many times, Mike, our procurement system is meant to gold plate, cost plus 3, whatever it is, and it's all like frilly junk.
Yep.
It doesn't work, and the goal is to enrich the contractors, just like you were saying.
Who in turn will enrich the members of Congress who are voting these programs through. In reading the descriptions about all the problems with the Gerald R. Ford, it's going to take a lot more money to bring it to the point where it could actually be deployed. And I've read some stories where naval experts are saying it may not ever really be usable in combat.
Yeah, and that's what, $10 billion, and that's not even including the junk embarked air wing, which is another $20 billion of F-35s that won't fly. So here you have a ship that will barely float, that can't launch planes, and the planes they could launch would probably just fall right into the ocean. I mean, it's horrible, and all that for $30 billion.
It
and
really
the concept itself, Mike, is ridiculous with these hypersonic weapons. I mean, they have a shelf life. I mean, their combat life would last seconds, really.
Yes.
But yeah, only 30 billion. What the hell?
All right. Well, Peter, thank you very much for the phone call. We're going to let you go and switch over to Terry in California. Aloha, Terry. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike, just listen to Peter. We might as well just surrender to the Russians right now, invite them in to occupy us, and get rid of all the graft and get rid of the Zionists. I mean,
I'm sure the Russians would say, no. You guys made that mess. You cleaned it up yourselves. We've got our own country to take care of.
I know, exactly. Well, the Army came up with this, like the numbers Peter was quoting with the infantry. They came out with a new term now for, 24 months. They got some MOSs that'll... you only have to sign up for 24 months. I don't know if that's Bravos or what, but I'm sure it's not the high-tech stuff that they have. But, and still then they're having a lot of trouble recruiting.
Yes.
But,
and they're offering, they're paying out like huge enlistment bonuses, like $40,000.
Exactly. And that, I don't know for what, length of time that is, but, I was always surprised to see the Air Force had a problem with those suicides because, you look at them as, not being in the thick of it, but I think they're expanding. They do things like, drive the trucks out there and some of the roads. They have the IEDs on them and stuff. So I think they're integrating the military more than they used to. But, I don't even call this country America anymore, the United States, because, like you said, it's a Vichy government that's controlled by an outside country. And it's really more like Czechoslovakia was in the 1950s.
Yes.
Where the president of the, communist bloc country had to, take orders from a dictator from another country. And that's pretty much the situation we're in now.
Yeah, it is.
I think. So, when people say we're doing this and we're doing that, I don't even use the word we anymore.
Yeah.
And that treaty that Trump pulled out of, I think that had to be ratified by the Senate when it went in. Isn't that true? Or the Congress, whatever?
It was ratified. Yeah,
it was ratified. So, if it's ratified, I guess Trump can just pull out of it legally without getting it unratified.
Yeah.
And do you know much about the details of that treaty?
Well, again, it was a treaty that was specific to a class of nuclear-armed missiles that would cover a certain range. And the goal there was to reduce the threat to Europe from both Russia and the United States. So right now, the Europeans have got to be getting very nervous over the fact that Trump just pulled out of that treaty.
And what's the motivation? Just to boost the military-industrial complex and get it heated up?
Probably that's a big part of it. I mean, the Pentagon is already raring to go. They're ready to start building these intermediate-range nuclear missiles.
Right. Yeah. So, to pay for all that, you got to print money, right, Mike?
Yep.
I mean, there's no money, so you got to print it, right?
Yep.
That's how they pay for it. So when they do that, you got a big threat of hyperinflation. You got a big threat of other countries going off the dollar as a reserve currency status.
Yes, which is already happening.
That's just self-defeating. I mean, it means that our money be worth nothing, and then what do we go to then? I don't think there's any gold available to go back to a gold standard, is there?
It would depend on how the gold was valued. I mean, some of the countries that are establishing a gold standard, the single unit is a very tiny, almost a chip of gold in a card. And but again, it depends on how you value it. But having any kind of a commodity base under your currency is going to stabilize it and basically say, this is how much wealth you have, whether it's gold, silver, platinum, white seashells. If you have a commodity base, that's much better than simply printing the money up out of thin air.
I don't think we have a commodity base. What commodity are they going to base it on?
No, well, it used to be gold, but Nixon ended that.
Right. Well, it was probably back in a corner where he had to, because people, like France and Germany, if they wanted their gold back or traded in for dollars like they used to do, it would wipe us all out. So I don't know. He was back in a corner when he made that decision.
Yeah, he really was. And yeah, it was in fact France that triggered this whole thing because they had, a huge stacks of Federal Reserve notes. And they wanted them turned in for the equivalent in gold under the Bretton Woods Agreement. But see, the problem is the Federal Reserve hadn't restrained itself in terms of how many of those notes they were printing and putting out. And so France had a lot more of those banknotes than we had gold to cover. And that's when Nixon closed the gold window. They called it the Nixon shock. And it really messed up the global economy. And it's led to a lot of people wondering just how much gold is there. We covered this in that History Channel show, The Gold Conspiracy. Is there really the people's gold still in Fort Knox, or has it in fact been siphoned out and spent someplace else?
Yeah, and a lot of that problem came from the Vietnam War, where the dollar lost a lot of its value because they had, I think, how much they lose? About 35% of the value of the dollar after Vietnam.
Yep.
Because, the military was doing exactly what Peter was talking about. I mean, they had charts where they're logging all this tonnage of bombs they dropped, and
yep,
that was the measure of success. How, the resources you could spend, was what they were gauging everything on in the military.
Yes.
So, and of course, we got nothing for it. It was all counterproductive, which all the wars have been, since World War II or even that one. I don't know, but just a small point going back to what Peter was saying, the 5.56 round can't get out to those anti-tank weapons. Well, they got those machine guns that I think they're 7.62. I think the squad weapon's still 5.56, but maybe they need some more of those machine guns.
Well, put a 50 cal up on the top of those tanks. Let them sweep out their own area. My recollection is that the M16, like the AR-15, shot a .223 round.
Well, yeah, it's 5.56. Which is
yes, okay.
But before that, we had the 7.62, the M14, is what I qualified on, and they had them in Vietnam when I was there, and they did the big transition to the M16. And being a flight crew, I got the AR-15, which, I could get about 2 or 3 rounds out of it before the thing jammed up. And I know they've improved it quite a bit, they have to, but you remember that story about Hamburger Hill where all the troops were trying to kill a VC so they could go over and grab his 7.62 weapon.
Yeah.
Because they're, 5.56s were all jamming up, and they couldn't take any dirt and all that. And I'm sure they,
that goes back to the big scandal about how the military brass wanted the M14 and deliberately put the wrong propellant in the M16, which led to the jamming. Anyway, listen, Terry, got to let you go. Got to take another break for commercials. Be back with another phone call after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. We're going to go back to the phones to Tom in Florida. Aloha, Tom. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind today?
Hey, good day, Michael. Michael, I'm wondering, is Oprah going to run for president or Michelle, you think?
Well, I mean, there seem to be a lot of people talking about Michelle Obama running for the presidency, which would effectively give Barack a third term. But I don't know how well that's going to come across. I mean, she's certainly very popular, but it's going to be hard selling the idea that she's capable of doing the job. And of course, it would be foolish to come on out and say, vote for Michelle Obama so Barack can be back in control.
Yeah, well, maybe Oprah will run. We'll
No,
see.
Oprah's already said she's not going to run.
Oh, okay. Yeah, Michael, what I want to give you today on information is they have AOC saying that Texas could go blue this next election.
Yes.
And I'm just wondering myself, how can that be that Texas, which was a very red state 8 years ago, now all of a sudden is less? And let's get back to California.
It's all those illegal immigrants. All these illegal immigrants flooding in, registering as Democrats, and yeah, it's going to flip these states.
Well, do you know, Michael, in 1981 when Reagan beat Carter, do you know how many votes he beat him by in the state of California? I just found out. Almost 600,000 votes.
Yeah.
Okay? How can it be possible California was such a red state in 81 up to like even 90, and after that it went totally blue? It was just like a total blackout for...
Well, we saw that during the midterms where all these districts that had previously been red, all of a sudden they're blue. It's the illegal immigrants who are registered and voting Democratic, and nobody's doing a thing about it.
Well, Michael, that's what I was trying to tell you yesterday, and Dustin up there in New Jersey, I heard him yesterday as well. Well, something about Cuba and Venezuela.
Yep.
Well, no, listen, I don't need Cuba and Venezuela. I live in Cuba, okay?
Yep.
Dustin, so, you don't have to go there with me on that. Now, he was saying something about Venezuela. Well, Venezuela had a government before Hugo came in there and started pushing all this socialist nonsense like the Democrats are doing right now. And look what happened to Venezuela. No food, the medical profession's destroyed.
Now,
and,
Tom,
government.
Let's be fair. Hugo Chavez was actually doing a good job for Venezuela and the Venezuelan people, and that was what made a lot of the other Western powers afraid, because they thought, people might rise up and say, hey, we want a government that takes care of us. And so Venezuela was subject to decades of economic warfare, sabotage, an actual coup d'etat against Hugo Chavez. Venezuela's problems are not the result of them being socialist. It's a result of them setting what was seen as a bad example by the bankers.
So, Michael, I'll hold on.
Yeah, hold on. We got to take a station identification. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. Hour number 3. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. We're talking with Tom in Florida. We're talking about how this open borders policy, this massive influx of illegal immigrants who are illegally registering to vote and voting Democratic are changing the election demographics of the country. They're voting themselves, our country, out from under us. And they're not supposed to be doing that. You have to be a legal citizen to vote, and nobody's doing anything about it.
Well, Michael? Yes, Michael, are you there?
Yes.
Yeah, Michael, listen, if this is the case, David Dwight Eisenhower knew in 1955, 56 that he had to massively deport him because he probably knew this was going to happen. This wasn't about them coming for jobs. This was coming in to vote to take the power over. It's like I told you about Dade and Broward.
Yes.
Okay? Now, I'm telling you, if Donald Trump or the Republicans don't see this, or the Anglo population in whole doesn't see this, it's going to be a total wipeout. We won't have a country within the next 10 years. I won't even give it 20 years. It's going to be 10 years. Because look at the political apparatus right now. If this is the case, then you got this coming down with this immigration invasion. It's just over, Michael. It is already totally over. Because once Texas goes blue, it's what are you going to even have an electoral college vote for? For what? California's already gone with their 72 electoral votes. New Jersey, where Dustin's from, that state's gone. You'll never vote Republican again. Baltimore, all these cities. I mean, this is a total wipeout. And if Trump doesn't see that right now and say, as a principal, as the commander-in-chief of the Allied forces and the president of the United States, anybody here is illegally here, anybody caught voting illegally is going to be thrown right the hell out of this country. Right now, pronto. Hasta la vista, baby.
Well, they announced 1 million deportations, 2 weeks ago?
You're going to see the Turner Diaries. You're going to see the Turner Diaries in its place. You watch. You might think I'm crazy for saying that. Well, I'll be an old man, but I'm telling you, in 10 years from now, you're going to see the Turner Diaries. You know what that's all about.
Well, again, I think it was 2 weeks ago, they announced there were going to be 1 million deportations. I think they got 35. You know, I mean, Trump has to understand if this illegal immigrant voting problem isn't dealt with, it will cost him the next election. It's almost not going to matter who the Democrats put up there because they rigged the elections in 2016. They rigged the primaries. And if they have 26 million illegal immigrants in this country voting demographic, that's enough basically to steal the election.
Well, there he is, Michael. You just said the number. You must be watching One American News Network because every hour in the hour they're showing that figure, 26, 27 million. That's the only network, like I told you yesterday, will do that. Now, let's get back to this, Michael. Everything's tribal in this world, okay? When you go to prison, you're going to go hang out with what group? Or you're going to go hang out with that group? Or you're going to hang out with your own? So, all this crap about no borders, well, every country has to have a border. You don't have a country.
Yes.
Without borders, there is no country. Without cultural identity. So this crap, I call them chicken hawk lily whites. The chicken hawks in this country are going to come home to roost like Reverend Rice said. They're getting ready to come home to roost. Okay?
Yep.
Now, and Mitt Romney, that Mormon, he had he could have paid for a picture. It was $1 million to his campaign in 2012. All that had to show was him and Farrakhan together, Sotero, Obama, and Farrakhan, and the media would have turned on him and went for Romney. But he wouldn't even pay $1 million. What kind of setup was that? Where Mitt Romney would pay $1 million for those pictures some Zionist man had, some Jew boy had, and he wouldn't, whatever you want to call it, Jewish man, whatever the hell he is, he had some young guy, he had a picture of that. How come that wasn't brought out in the media? Michael?
Well, as you said, Romney dropped the ball on that. Now, I'd like to back up a little bit to what you were talking about Eisenhower, because when Eisenhower was running Operation Wetback, they were coming across the border for economic means. They were coming across the border to vote because back in that day, we had much stricter voting laws. You had to have your ID. You had to have an address, and there were safeguards in place to make sure that non-citizens weren't going to vote. That all got thrown out in 2016. The Democrats literally sent lawyers into every single state to argue and strike down the voter ID laws as somehow being racist.
Well, yeah, there you go. Thank you for the correction. But yeah, Michael, I was telling you yesterday, all these illegals are coming here. They all have to have a car. So they're talking about the Green New Deal.
Yep.
All these people are going to have cars. They're going to food, water. This ain't California. You got to drive. Someplace in California, you drop water, the people go nuts. You better be careful in California. Some parts of California, you waste water. You can't waste water in California. You know that. There's some places that they'll shoot you over water. I mean, but you're going to be bringing all these people, multiple millions of people constantly pouring into the country, and mainly California and Arizona, Texas. This is a total disaster.
It is.
Trump, I guess, does know it as a commander-in-chief, but he's not doing nothing about it. When the day that lady mayor in Oakland went to tell them that the ICE is coming and she was trying to hide them, she should have been arrested and get thrown a 25-year sentence, hard labor. Okay?
Yeah, it was clear Title VIII violation.
Nation of the nation. This is sedating the nation with this nonsense what these nincompoop Democrats are trying to do. Chicken hawks. The chicken hawks are doing. And I'm telling you, Michael, I've made it clear to you numerous times on your show. Dade County is a perfect example. There's not one Anglo on the Miami Commission. Not one. Zero.
California, there's one city council that actually has an illegal immigrant as a city councilor. I mean, that's how completely out of control it is.
And Michael, I don't know if you know this, but the hospitals, most of the southern hospitals in the south, who do you think their workers are? Do you have any idea?
Well, I would presume that the appropriately trained medical personnel.
Well, a lot of them don't speak English too well. I can tell you that right now.
How do they get a nursing certificate or whatever other paperwork they need to be working in a hospital?
Well, I don't know. You tell me. But Julian Castro could tell you. I mean, you saw him at the debate the other night. That was a joke. I mean, you know what this guy's motive is. You know, this country being totally wiped out.
Yeah. Raza.
And you don't want to
He's part of Raza. I understand he's part of Raza. Well, here's the problem. If those hospitals are hiring illegal immigrants, as you know, to wipe the floors or something like that, again,
I don't say they're illegal. They could be. They could have the green card or whatever. I'm not saying they're illegal.
If they have a green card, then welcome and fine here. My issue is with the illegal immigrants, not the legal immigrants. The legal immigrants, I don't have a problem with them at all. But the illegal immigrants are coming across the border in such huge numbers. Yeah, it's a huge strain on the country's resources. And because nobody's enforcing voter ID, they're going to vote Democratic to vote themselves more free stuff.
That's correct. Michael, one more thing, and I'll let you go. Why, you know, all these people coming into North America, how come they're not going to Argentina where the Pope's from? The Pope's in Rome, and he's from Argentina. How come all these illegals from Central America don't go to Argentina or Uruguay or Bolivia or one of those Colombia countries? Why are they coming here? Why don't they go down there? They already got they got nice countries on there.
They do. They really do. They're clearly being encouraged to come to the United States. And again, it's that promise of free stuff. If you go to Argentina or Bolivia, you will have the opportunity to work for a living. But if you go to the United States of America, you can kick back on welfare and just watch TV and get involved in street crime.
Free college. And you get free college.
And you get free college and medical care. Okay, well, Tom, thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go and do a shout out to our on-air affiliates who are rejoining the network. And back to the phones, Marina in Vancouver. Aloha, Marina. Thank you for waiting patiently. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. First of all, let me start by saying that I am not a good public speaker. I've been listening to you for 3 years, but I've never actually called because of that. But I have sort of reached the end of my line, and I wanted to run past you what I know, and perhaps you can offer me some suggestions. 2 weeks ago, Art from the Grid phoned, and he informed us of the all bodies swim in Langley, BC.
Yes.
Where 12-year-old children and up were allowed to go to this optional topless swim where parents and guardians were not allowed. He'll be happy to know that that was postponed, but not canceled. There was an identical swim that went down in Surrey earlier this year, and they that went on. That wasn't canceled. That proceeded. Anyways, the person that is putting this swim together, he went to Langley Council, and according to Langley newspaper, demanded, not asked, not suggested, but demanded that this swim be held. So that one was canceled. The person that is spearheading this swim is called Jonathan Yanev, who has changed his name to Jessica Yanev, and is he insists on being called female. That's half of my story. If you're aware, I don't know if you are or not, if it filtered down to you, there's a bit of controversy going on in Vancouver and area right now, because this biological male wanted to have a Brazilian wax done.
Yes.
Oh, you heard about it?
Yes.
Yeah, Brazilian. I haven't heard you talk about any of that, and I listen to you every day in the evenings. Anyways, Brazilian wax. And 3 people refused him. And after the third one refused him, he started taping the conversation. A total of 15 people refused him because I don't know why. Surely there's got to be male Brazilian wax somewhere around Vancouver. But once these people found out that it's it's a biological male. They all refused him. After the first 3 refused him, he started taping them. So the people on the other hand, on the other side, did not know they were being taped.
Yes.
It now went last week, or maybe on Monday or something, or Tuesday possibly, to tribunal. And the judge has decided to not make a decision for, depending on who you listen to, either September or November of this year. I have reached the end of my line. Like, I no longer feel that I can just sit here and do nothing. I think Art of the Grid is pretty close to that point as well.
Yes, a lot of people are.
I'm not hearing that as much from everybody else. Yes, a lot of people have passed the point of where any of this is acceptable. But I think Art of the Grid is the closest. This now pushed me over the line.
Okay.
So my question to you, anyways, male Brazilian wax. The person's name is Jonathan Yanev.
Yes.
That's changed his name to Jessica. So this is the same person. There was Dan, I believe it's Dan Hicks from The Truth, something about the truth.
Okay.
That alternate media. And Jonathan's mother knocked the camera out of his hand. So that's an assault as far as a lot of people would see.
Yes.
He insists on being called a female, which is a disgrace to me because I am a female. And he will, he's taking people to court left, right, and center.
Yeah, I know.
For not admitting that this is a female, and it's not. So, if not before, and if I find out on time when this tribunal or this decision that the judge is making is being held, I intend to be there, and I intend to be there with a sign. And hopefully I will keep my mouth shut. If I try real hard, I can. But I'm going to let my sign speak. My question to you is, does the police have a right to remove me? I know it's a permitted speech, not free speech, which should be guaranteed to me as well as to him. Now, if Jonathan wants to identify as a woman, that is none of my business. You know, there's all kinds of things. There's chemicals in the air. There's childhood trauma. There's looking for attention.
Well, they're looking for attention, and this whole LGBTQ situation is being so heavily politicized. And there are a lot of LGBTQ people who are just out there saying, leave us alone. We want to live our lives.
I would very much like to leave them alone, but this one is being pushed down everybody's throat.
Yeah, that's where the problem is.
Yeah.
So as far as the police in Vancouver, I have not been in Vancouver for a great many number of years, and I was not there with a sign. So you're going to have to basically research the local laws as to what is allowed. You might want to see if there's a group organizing a protest, so you're not just going alone. And I'm going to take a guess here.
Go alone, but if there is something being done, I will join the group.
I would definitely say, I would expect that there's probably going to be demonstrations on both sides of the issue, as this thing goes before the judge.
Okay. If they detain me, if I'm quiet and being peaceful, if they detain me, I am prepared to sue myself, actually. No, not sue myself, but sue somebody for for taking my freedom away
Yes.
when I know I'm right. So how would I proceed with that?
Again, I don't know the laws.
And I don't know.
I don't know the laws in Vancouver, and you might want to consult with like your local legal aid society, and just, what are the ground rules here?
Okay. And so if I go to the police station and ask if I'm permitted to stand there with the sign totally quiet, is that a way to start this?
Yeah, I think that would be a very good way to start that, and just say, there's this situation coming up in October, November, and I just want to stand, on the sidewalk with a protest sign, peacefully. What are the laws that cover that? And probably
Okay.
you'll get some good information there.
All right, I will do that. Also, one more thing that I didn't say is that this Jonathan Yanev, that legally changed his name to Jessica, is also, and I'm just going to say there's a rumor, I'm going to qualify that, it's a rumor that he's accused of sexual assault on a 15-year-old, but I do not know if the 15-year-old is a male or a female.
I had heard something along that line as well. I mean, this guy's seriously messed up. There's no question about it. And I think probably he's lived his life with a great deal of repression. And now all of a sudden it's trendy and fashionable to be out there and in the face of the straights. And he's taking advantage of that situation.
If you looked at his mother, she's this Ukrainian woman. She's the one that knocked the camera out of reporter's hand.
Okay. All right. Well, listen, Marina, I have to let you go. We've got to do a commercial break. But actually, you speak quite well. Just hang on to that. We'll be back after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. We're going to go back to the phones to Dustin in Jersey. Aloha, Dustin. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, I want to talk about Trump's tariff. Where's Claire?
Claire is working on stuff related to our move, and she's probably not going to be doing our Friday third hours until after we're settled in Indiana.
Okay. Well, I want to talk about the Trump tariffs and respond to Tom from Florida, but on Marina's, I saw that story on RT with the transgender, well, the guy became a girl. This could be a con because I know he's going around suing all these different salons that do the waxings.
Yeah.
So it could be just a con because some of the LGBT A to Z groups come out and they said he doesn't represent or she doesn't represent, the vast majority of people. So this just could be a con. And she mentioned
like with all those bakeries, where these gay couples were going into the bakery shops and demanding a gay wedding cake. And the baker said, no, I'm a Christian. And rather than go to find another baker more amenable to what they want, we're going to sue. And they take them to court, and they've driven some of these bakeries out of business.
Yeah, I still think transgenderism is a mental disorder, like liberalism, because, come on, that weightlifting thing you talked about the other day, it blew my mind, the Pacific weight, if you're a man, if the guy's got bigger, the woman now got 3 times the size of my arms and I'm a man, something's wrong there,
I can't believe the ACLU came on down on the side of saying that, if a man says he's a woman, he's a woman.
And you said they're going to allow him to compete in the Olympics, like in the real Olympics? That's nuts. Come on, man. I never really watch the Olympics. It's only for the intro, because the intros are beautiful, and after that, I usually don't watch sports. So, but Mike, Tom from Florida. Tom, I got to respond to you. How long has Cuba been under sanctions, Mike?
60 years.
I don't know.
60 years, going back to the Bay of, going back to the Castro Revolution.
Lift the sanctions. Lift them on Venezuela. Why do you? I'm not supporting communism or socialism but lift the sanctions. Like let their own economies run. It has nothing to do with if you like their system or not. But why do you have sanctions? The sanctions are the things doing the harm.
Yeah, they definitely are, and certainly it's been a problem for Cuba. One of the few things that Barack Obama did that I approved of was that he wanted to normalize relations with Cuba, but then as soon as Trump got into office, he completely reversed that.
And Tom, by the way, in 2007 and 2008, this country's economy came to a halt. It collapsed. That's what happened That's why they're printing money and they've got to lower the interest rates, because it's still the same game that happened in 2007. What do you think your government did? It bailed out Wall Street and the bankers.
Yep.
So, I mean, you have that kind of, I talked about it's that kind of a system. Like you're propping up a corporation. So you can't throw, rocks if you live in a glass house also, because your government's really no different than these entities. When it comes to not all things, but certain things, And then I got a question for you, Mike. Okay,
yep.
On Trump's, I talked about it yesterday with the bailout for the farmers. What happens next year, and the year after that, and the year after? Is he going to bail out the farmers every year?
Well, actually, in a very real way, farmers are bailed out every year. It's called the Farm Subsidy Program, and it's done to help keep food prices low for the American people, to keep them contented. So that's kind of part of the ongoing permanent spending by the U.S. government.
So, see, is that socialism or fascism? There's a thin line we're walking here with all of this stuff.
Yes.
I mean,
well, I think we're on the fascistic side of the line.
Yeah, and you know what, Mike? In the long run, it's propping up something that shouldn't have been, because I looked, and Huawei sales up 26%.
Yes.
So, and then with the soybeans, the same thing. Who's going to buy those soybeans? 60%. I think 60% of the farmers sold the soybeans to China.
Yeah, and China's now cut that off, and it's going to be hard selling those soybeans to other countries because they're GMO.
But Mike, what happens to the farmers that have leased equipment? Even with the bailouts, you still can't afford.
They're in trouble.
They're paying for
the small farms, the small family farms are in serious trouble. They're going to go extinct. Anyway, Dustin, do you have more to say?
No, that's it, Mike. Have a good weekend.
All right, thanks. We're going to take another break for commercials, and we'll be back with another phone call after these few words. And aloha, Mirko. Welcome back to our show. We're going to go back to the phones to Casey in North Idaho. Aloha, Casey. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. It's nice to finally talk to you. I've been following you since you were over on GCN, so it's nice to call in. I heard your last caller there, or the one before Dustin, from Vancouver, I believe it was.
Marina.
Yeah, she's concerned about protesting. I went to a local drag queen story hour, actually two of them in Spokane, Washington, June 15th and June 22nd, acting as the press, taking video, and I can tell you a little bit about it if you'd like to know more about it, but long story short is they tried to kick any conservative media across the street to the protest side. So it took place at a library.
Yeah.
And so there was a counter protest on the library grounds that was in support of the LGBT and the drag queen story hour. And across the street was the protest, which featured 500 Moms Strong, which is an organization run by Anna Bohatch. And then there's some Christians and some radical. And both sides were swearing at each other across the street. So anyways, I can kind of tell you a little bit about it, but they tried to throw me across the street. Well, they did. They said that you could report on the event from across the street, and actually witnessed two other media outlets as they shook my hand, after I was allowed to go back over and exercise my First Amendment, these two media outlets, one from the New American Magazine, which is a magazine put out by the John Birch Society, the senior editor of that magazine, and another guy that runs a website, were both told to go across the street because the senior editor had a cross on his tie. The other guy was handing out business cards on the back that said socialismtoday.info. And two people approached them as I was talking to them, and they were questioned as to why they had a cross and why the other guy was handing out a business card that said what it said. They went to go get the police, and the police kicked them across the street. So it's documented. I wrote an article. It's on Readout News. Just look for Drag Queen Story Hour and the Media Hit Job. So Sherry Duvally of Readout News and her husband were also kicked across the street. So, yeah, it's pretty insane. I can't believe this is America. But they were trying to understandably keep the protesters separate. But legitimately, I had like one lady who came up to me a couple days later, and she was crying. She had her daughter or a younger child with her. She was just trying to go to the library, and they were shaking her down, asking her what side she's on. So it was very egregious. There's lawsuits ongoing. I may have one also.
Yeah.
But Pastor Ashton Yakin was arrested, and I have like 4 different body camera angles of his arrest. It's on my YouTube channel, and I can tell you where it is if you're interested. But so it's documented. But it's very, very disturbing times we're in right now.
Well, if you could email me that URL, I'd like to link it to my page here. Again, this whole situation is being politicized, and very clearly somebody somewhere has set a policy that this is a good thing to be protected by the police. And obviously I disagree. These kids who are in these library sessions, they are really way too young to be dealing with these kind of complex issues. They're still trying to figure out who they are. And I think exposing children of that age to this sort of experience is going to be detrimental to them. And
the United Nations, we know this is their plan. Equality, gender equality, it's all being dictated from the top. So, but I didn't mean to cut you off there. But really quick, if I may, there were 2 snipers on the roof at the first event, and I can actually see sandbags cresting the top of the roof. And then also when you tried to walk in the lobby of the library, there was a table perpendicular with, like 5 crowd management people. They were checking bags. They were waving a metal detector wand over people. And then as I go into the main part of the library, I couldn't find it. I had no idea where the Drag Queen Story Hour was. After the fact, I found out it was actually in the lobby, or adjacent to the lobby, in a secured room with a sign next to the door that said no photo or video. And I actually have a video or a picture I took of a crowd management person standing in the entryway of the door. I tried to go in there. She said, no, you have to go to the next one because I missed the event. And as she turned her head, I snapped a picture of a photographer, mainstream media in there taking a picture with the sign saying no photo or video. So it's just a very mind-boggling incident. So I just wanted to share that with you. So.
Well, thank you for sharing that with me. And yeah, it's children should not be exposed to that. I'm sorry?
Oh, I said welcome to America.
Yeah.
I know children shouldn't be exposed to that.
All right. Well, thank you very much for the phone call, and we're going to switch over to Lenny in California. Aloha, Lenny. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yes, what's on my mind is I was going to call about something else, but when I heard Marina, I just had to respond to it. When just to hear this, and let me just say this to you, Marina, if you're listening. You've already won the battle. In your mind and soul, you refuse to accept the BS that's being programmed into you. You, by nature, are rejecting it, so you've already won that battle. I feel sorry for the ones who are unable or unwilling to try and stand up for what is by nature their right. Now, I'll just give you an example, Marina. 2 weeks ago, I was invited to a dinner up in, let's say a little high class part of California, and I'm sitting at the table, and it's a group of people at the table, and one gentleman who's British by nature, but who now has a citizenship here in the U.S., and he's working at a rehab center, a drug rehab center, a very high-class drug rehab center. He's dealing with a couple of quote-unquote transgenders. And as he's telling us stories about the transgenders and how their stories are so endearing, he must have read my face. And his response to me was, "Do you have a problem with that?" To which I simply replied, "The problem is not mine. I know exactly who and what I am. All right, so I don't have a problem, okay? But my question to you, sir, if you're putting that to me, is if by nature they can say that they are one thing from one day to the next, at that very moment I told him I was the Queen of England. And from that moment I wanted to be treated as the Queen of England while I was sitting there at the dinner table. Of course, you can imagine that got a big laugh from the people at the dinner table. But I wanted to impress upon him how easy it is to program the mind, okay? And that is all it is. But if you know who and what you are, you're not easily programmed. Marina, you've already won the battle because you know something is wrong, all right? Now,
good point.
I want to jump to the other stuff. You had stated earlier about the quote-unquote, and I don't think you agree with it, but you did state it. You said about the popularity of so-called Michelle Obama. And the Democrats are so desperate that they will try anything. And you're right, that this is just a way of getting Obama back into the White House so he can really cover up what he did to Trump. All right? But Michelle is only popular in the eyes of the mainstream media. And they want her to be popular, so they're trying to convince us that she's popular.
Okay.
Right? But they're really desperate. As a whole, they are desperate. But let me just say this real quick. As far as Tom is concerned down in Florida and him talking about the Venezuelans, come on, man. I mean, you corrected it and Dustin backed you up, so I'm just going to go ahead and cement it. Look, the Rothschilds have had their foot on these countries, Venezuela, North Korea, Syria, Iran. They've had their foot on these people's necks because they want this thing in one world order, which they totally control, and the United States is their enforcing thug. That's all it is.
Yep.
All right? And they're trying to do the same thing in Hong Kong right now. But China has just stepped up, and they're trying to do the same thing in Hong Kong through the CIA, the George Soros-sponsored Fifth Column, and the British MI6. But China has just announced that it all ends now. All right?
Yep.
And unless they straighten up, Hong Kong is about to be Tiananmen Squared. And I'm with China all the way. That's all I got to say, Michael. Thank you very much and have a good Friday.
All right. Well, thank you very much for the phone call. We're going to let you go. The phone lines are now open, 800-313-9443. Getting on back to the news here. It turns out that Great Britain is the world's second largest arms exporter. And that has all come about because during the turmoil over the last going on 20 years in the Middle East, the United Kingdom is basically supplying weapons and ammunition to all of these Middle East Arab states. They sell to anybody, and it's basically blood money. But apparently, $17 billion in 2018. So there's definitely a lot of money involved there, and that's really what it's all about. All righty, let's talk a little bit about the economy. It was a rough ride on the stock market today. It was really down for a bit. They got close to parity at the end, but still in the red. No traditional Friday happy ending. But the Fed's rate cut was supposed to boost markets and slam the dollar. It didn't work. And one day after the stocks tumbled, when Powell disappointed markets with his cut, the biggest plunge for stocks on a rate cut day since 1987. And the global markets, it just caromed all around the globe. And the world markets are a sea of red. The whole system is very fragile and it's too interconnected. That's the downside of globalism here. All right, China is vowing to retaliate after the announcement of fresh tariffs. And Trump has declared his intention to slap tariffs on the other $300 billion in Chinese goods that haven't already been impacted come the 1st of September, a month from now. How will Beijing respond to this? Now, so far, Chinese media has been quiet on it, and that may be because China's senior lawmakers have left for their annual 2-week policy conclave, which is typically held out of sight of both the public and the media. So it may be 2 weeks before we get a response. But I can't imagine that China is going to take this very lightly. Okay, over at IBM, apparently they're facing some lawsuits because they laid off 100,000 of their older workers. And apparently it was done to boost its appeal to the younger generation and make IBM appear cool and trendy instead of being an old fuddy-duddy organization. So IBM has been hit by several lawsuits accusing the tech giant of discrimination against older workers, including a class action case in Manhattan and individual civil lawsuits in California, Pennsylvania, and Texas. And it was a dumb thing for IBM to do, especially when you remember what happened to Boeing when they let their older, experienced white engineers go. And they had all those problems with the 787 and the 737 MAX. It's going to be decades before they recover from that, if ever. Boeing right now is in a situation of needing there to be a war to sell warplanes because the civilian market is drying up here. Okay, French farmers are protesting this European Union-Canada trade deal, which will remove tariffs on nearly all goods and services between Ottawa and the European Union. And this is bringing fears that it will bring unfair competition to French farmers who have responded by dumping manure outside the office of a Macron Party member of Parliament. So apparently they're having a little bit of problem over there at Notre Dame, where they're discovering that a lot more lead was used in its original construction than had originally been known. And the other big problem they have is that all those people who promised they were going to pony up millions of dollars for the reconstruction, the checks are not arriving. Mario Draghi is laying out a plan for a dangerous round of stimulus, and he's going to stick his successor with a new phase of expansionary monetary policy. And we need to remember that the Maastricht Treaty assigned the ECB the single non-negotiable goal of maintaining stable prices, which if taken literally means an inflation rate of 0. Then you had the euro crisis. With inflation plummeting, the ECB turned the still tolerable upper limit for the inflation rate into its target. And suddenly it was argued the bank would seek to achieve inflation of close to but below 2%. And Draghi even went on TV to claim this was the ECB's mandate. No, it wasn't. Okay. Multiple job holders soar to record high as old Americans can't afford to retire. So you have the pension crisis, the Social Security crisis. Apparently another Tesla vehicle has spontaneously combusted. You know, Elon Musk, he's doing a lot of really good things, especially with SpaceX, but he does need to get his Tesla house in order, because that was kind of the foundation of all of it. The president of the National Union of Students of the United Kingdom says she wants to, quote, oppress white people, end quote, and have an Islamic takeover. Now, in 2012, after the hashtag if I was president, Zamzam Ibrahim 24-year-old first-generation Somali immigrant from Greater Manchester tweeted, "I depress white people just to give them a taste of what they put us through." There's a lot of victimology going on here. And when responding to questions online about what books people should read, Ibrahim said, read the Quran. So how's that open border thing working out for you there? All right, we're coming up here on our final commercial break for this Pauhana Friday, and we'll be back with the last segment of our program after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. Last segment on this Pauhana Friday, and boy, been a long, tiring week here. Facebook is reportedly working on a backdoor content scanner for WhatsApp that will scan your messages before you send them and report anything suspicious. Doesn't say report to who. I have enough problem with Apple's spell correct creating some embarrassing moments here. Speaking of Apple, last week it came on out that Apple's Siri was basically recording users having sex, buying drugs, talking about private medical material. And this material was all being sent to Apple contractors, all for the sake of quality control. Well, this, of course, is a huge privacy scandal. And in the backlash of all this, Apple has decided to suspend its global internal program for grading user Siri commands following the public backlash over the Guardian's revelations. Now, if you wanted an application for an AI, that would be it, because the AI isn't going to care if you're having sex. Meanwhile, Microsoft is saying 30% of Internet of Things projects fail in the proof of concept stage. And security experts continue to warn of the Internet of Things vulnerability. And the 74% failure rate can cause catastrophic events. Now, like so many other things, it sounded cool, but once it meets the real world, there are serious problems. Okay, over in New York, there's a new law will take effect on August 14th that will allow sex abuse victims 1 year to sue over past sexual abuse claims, regardless of when they occurred. And they are expecting there will be a tidal wave of child sexual abuse lawsuits in the courts. I still don't understand this stuff. I really don't. Apparently, over in the Democratic Republic of Congo, the epidemic of Ebola sharply widened Wednesday, which was the eve of the first anniversary of the outbreak, with the announcement of a death in a major city and the quarantining of 15 people in a province that had previously escaped the disease. So this is very, very serious. And again, one carrier who is not symptomatic getting on an airplane, and this thing will be everywhere. Another little article that came on out here suggesting, this is in Journal Neo, suggesting that as the Yellowstone supervolcano starts to show that it might be close to eruption, you might see more and more Americans relocating to Russia, or for that matter to South America, because when that one blows, it's pretty much the entire western half of the U.S. is going to be gone. All right, there's the music. Time for me to get on out of here. Stay tuned for John Stadmiller. I'm sure he's got lots of interesting things to share with you. Please take what you learn here, share it with everybody that you know. Please donate to Republic Broadcasting. Please donate to whatreallyhappened.com. We'll be back on Monday. Aloha, America.